It was not the normal type of trauma that you see on the road. It was definitely some other encounter that they'd come across. These people were spooked.
What was it that so spooked a family driving along a lonely stretch of highway on the Nullarbor?
It wasn't like reality, it was just like a dream, but it was real.
It was 3 a.m. The desert was cool and clear. Then Sean saw it. A dazzling white light headed straight for them.
He told me, "Hey, Pat, wake up. There's something in front of us." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Wake up and check it out." He goes, "Look at that." He goes, "It's a UFO."
Yeah, I think that quote saying it wasn't like reality is, again, very interesting because, you know, we hear that these things, these encounters, abductions feel like they're perhaps happening in like a dreamlike state. But it's interesting to hear these guys talk about this in 1988 using like language that is very similar of the way we understand these things today. But it's interesting because these people obviously wouldn't have had that context to use those words. They're just doing their best to describe whatever the hell happened to them.
Sean panicked, tried to swerve out of the way, but still the object bore down on them. But that was only the beginning. Sean put his foot down and sped off along the highway.
It chased us for about a half hour, and then somehow it got in front of us. It must went around us, and before we knew it, this object landed on a car.
Next, the unbelievable happened. To this day, the Knowles family are adamant that their car was actually lifted off the ground.
History is dotted with strange lights and reported visits to Earth of UFOs. Australia itself records 180 sightings a year, and although 92% of these turn out to be planes, clouds, or some other natural phenomenon, 8% are never explained. And it is the skies to the west and south of this vast continent which have played host most frequently to the suspected flying saucers.
What was your reaction when you saw the light the first time?
Funny sensation. You feel the hairs in your legs sort of curling and your heart's beating at about a million things per second, and your arms and legs sort of don't want to move. So, what was it? I don't know.
These tough Aussie truckies are the last people you'd expect to believe in UFOs. But these pictures record their terrifying encounter. For the Port Neal community in South Australia, the visit of a UFO wasn't confined to the skies. There's no doubt from these pictures that it landed on the Rodders' property. Now the UFOs have disturbed the peace of the southwestern skies yet again when a bright light appeared above them, picked up their car and dropped it.
You know, to pick up... so this is what happened. They were driving... Their car got literally lifted off the ground and dropped. And there's a whole bunch of interesting details which you're going to hear in the interview. But, you know, what happened to these guys is very, like, unique, okay? Obviously, we hear there are a lot of similarities across UAP encounters that we hear. But having a car picked up and dropped, like, violently on the ground is something you don't hear about all the time. Like, this is a really interesting case. And again, when we get to the interview, some of the little points that they make, I think are fascinating.
A Perth family claims it's been confronted by a UFO while crossing the Nullarbor. Their stories being backed by other motorists, and the crew of 2 South Australian fishing boats have also reported being buzzed by a UFO. Faye Knowles and her 3 sons claim an orange blob picked their car up off the highway. They fled in terror into the scrub until the object disappeared.
The car was shaking. I went down the window and I said, "It's on top of the roof." All this, I don't know what it was, it all come inside the car like smoke. We thought we were all dead.
And I went down my window, and Mum said, "There's something on the roof." And I said, "No, come off it, you know, you've got to be joking." And she went down her window and she put her hand on the roof and she goes, "My God." She goes, "What is it?" And no, I swear to God, I'm not lying. I opened up my window, the car started going out of control. And all this smoke, and it was like smoke. I'm not lying. It was like smoke, and gases all started coming in the car, and me and my brother started to go crazy, you know. I thought it was going in my head. Felt like my brain was getting sucked out.
Felt like my brain was getting sucked out. That's like a Dementor from Harry Potter. Like, that's a very weird little detail that we don't hear too often. This encounter happened in 1988. Yo, if you're enjoying this clip, make sure you subscribe below and head on over to the main channel if you want to watch the full replay of this video. You might even be able to catch one of the streams live one time and get involved in the chat as well. All the links you need will be down below.
Late today, the Knowles family returned to the scene of their experience for the last time.
And you won't travel that stretch of road again?
No way.
You don't even wish to travel in your own car?
No.
That last little bit here where he's saying there's no way I want to drive on that road, and specifically like this shot here interviewing this guy, like he really comes across as pretty authentic to me, honestly. Like, you know, and it's interesting just to look back at the way people were in the 80s, and I wasn't alive in 1988. People back then would have perhaps looked at this and maybe been like unsure if these people were like telling the truth. But I feel, and I don't know what it is, and I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like when you look back at older footage, it's like easier to tell when people are being genuine or not. I don't know if it's because like it was before the internet and people were more just like simple in a way. Simple. I guess that is the best word, but I don't mean in a way of them being, you know, silly or dumb, right? But yeah, they come across as really authentic to me. I mean, this part is just crazy. This thing is lifting up their car and dropping it while they're going like at a super high speed, which they'll get into detail about in a moment. This happened in 1988, and this interview is the whole family being interviewed 36 hours after this encounter happened. And honestly, I really feel like, especially the mum, but all of them look like traumatized to the point where they're like they have that stare in their eyes where they're almost like looking through you. Like they look like they're not quite there. You know what I mean? Like that proper trauma stare.
Well, to the Knowles family in Adelaide, thanks for joining us. And 36 hours now after the event, do any of you have any doubts as to what happened? Do you still believe that it was a UFO that landed on your car?
Yes, we do.
Why do you believe that?
Because we actually saw it, you know, it was chasing us, and it all of a sudden it landed on our car, pulled our car back, and I put my hand out the window, and I fell on the roof.
What did you feel?
It was like a sponge on the roof. It was sucking the roof, you know, the car. It was a sponge. I saw
a sponge. Like that's such a, like I've never heard anything like that. You know, what was she actually touching the craft? Was she touching something else? Or is she like saying it was like a sponge absorbing the car? Weird detail.
It was not the normal type of trauma that you see on the road. It was definitely some other encounter that they'd come across. These people were spooked.
What was it that so spooked a family driving along a lonely stretch of highway on the Nullarbor?
It wasn't like reality, it was just like a dream, but it was real.
It was 3 a.m. The desert was cool and clear. Then Sean saw it. A dazzling white light headed straight for them.
He told me, "Hey, Pat, wake up. There's something in front of us." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Wake up and check it out." He goes, "Look at that." He goes, "It's a UFO."
Yeah, I think that quote saying it wasn't like reality is, again, very interesting because, you know, we hear that these things, these encounters, abductions feel like they're perhaps happening in like a dreamlike state. But it's interesting to hear these guys talk about this in 1988 using like language that is very similar of the way we understand these things today. But it's interesting because these people obviously wouldn't have had that context to use those words. They're just doing their best to describe whatever the hell happened to them.
Sean panicked, tried to swerve out of the way, but still the object bore down on them. But that was only the beginning. Sean put his foot down and sped off along the highway.
It chased us for about a half hour, and then somehow it got in front of us. It must went around us, and before we knew it, this object landed on a car.
Next, the unbelievable happened. To this day, the Knowles family are adamant that their car was actually lifted off the ground.
How big was it? What did it look like?
I don't really know. I can't really explain.
Did you see anything but a light?
Not really. It was a...
I can explain it. It was sort of... It was shaped like this. Hang on. It was shaped like this. Had like a little circle in the centre, and that was like a yellow sort of colour. It had on the outsides, it was sort of shaped like that, and on the outsides it was like that, and in the centre it was like that. And I asked my brother if that was a spaceship, and he goes, "Don't be stupid." I got up closer to have a look, and it was moving backwards and forwards, and so we decided to take off to have a look, and it was flying miles back and drove miles up the road again, and it was in front of us again.
How high off the ground was it?
It was on the ground.
I mean, it was on the
It
ground.
was on the ground, facing us when we were driving along.
So it was moving along with you?
Yeah, it was following us.
And then eventually you tried to get away from it, is that right?
It's still chasing us.
Sean, you were driving. How fast did you get up to?
I got up to about 200 kilometres.
And the car is capable of doing 200 kilometres an hour?
Yeah.
And at what stage did the object land on your roof? How fast were you going at the time?
I was doing about 200. I got a blowout. Once the car stopped, I blinked out, and I don't know what happened after that.
How do we know you're telling the truth?
Oh, there was even witnesses.
But a lot of people think that you are making it up. Do you realise that?
That's not true. No way.
When it landed on the car, what happened?
We were screaming and yelling.
And as soon as it landed on the car, that's when my tyre blew out.
Smoke started coming in the car.
Smoke started to come in the car, and that's when I just blanked out.
There was one report that your voices changed, is that correct?
Yes, they did.
This is weird.
In what way?
Really deep and slow, and I don't know. We started sounding like that. Real deep, deeper than that even. It was so deep, it's really hard to explain. More or less like our voice kind of died out as we were talking.
I find that so fascinating that these guys are saying as this encounter is happening, they're like screaming and they're all freaking out, but it sounds like their voices are like drowning out and dying. Yes, darkness, time dilation.
Has anyone ever done any editing before? Has anyone ever slowed down a video where someone's talking? Do we have any DJs in the chat? Have you ever pulled the tempo down on a vocal track of a song?
It starts to sound like your voice gets like stretched out and slowly dying. And time dilation is so prevalent in UFO sightings. Now, these guys don't talk about time dilation, but saying that it sounds like their voices are drowning out is literally the effect of audio with time dilation. And I find that so fascinating.